Our story begins with meeting the prince of the royal family. This is not the first time Jamie Welton has woken up from a long, boring dream. He is the eldest son of the Welton royal family and its legal heir. But no one knows who he was before he was reborn in this body. During another battle more than 50,000 years ago, he found himself in a difficult position, but did not admit defeat. Fighting with 12 gods, this magician declared that they were unable to defeat him because all they could do was to seal him. With a loud laugh, he declared that he was not against it, but warned his enemies that after his rebirth, the bright lights of the 12 gods would be plunged into complete darkness. Known in the past as Diablo Wolfer, he promised that he would not let them die easily and they would regret defying him. Thus, the 12 gods were able to seal him, but after a huge amount of time, a crack appeared in their barrier, thanks to which he was able to escape and was eventually reborn as the son of this family. Being the son of royalty, he received an incredible amount of attention, and his parents were delighted to see him. This was the first rebirth of the great magician from the past. As a child, he tried to say something in response to his annoying parents, but his vocal apparatus was not developed enough. He became an aristocrat, dearly loved by his parents. About 9 years have passed since then, yet he was forced to play his role like a child. For a great magician who had lived for more than 50,000 years, this was very tiring. Taking a break from excess attention, he realized that another boring day awaited him. When he woke up, a nanny came to see him, who also admired the young heir of the family. Jamie behaved with integrity and always treated his elders with respect. Having high manners, when asked what he was doing so early in the morning, the guy politely replied that he was admiring the beautiful morning sky. Not only his parents were annoying, but also his nanny, who complimented him during every meeting. A kind woman offered to help the heir get dressed, because his parents were already waiting for him. As befits the royal family, they spent breakfast, lunch, and dinner together. Approaching the door to the dining room, the nanny politely announced that the young master had arrived for breakfast. Realizing what awaited him, Diablo Wolfer sighed heavily. As soon as he walked inside, an incredible amount of care from the family was directed his way. The great magician from the past played his role perfectly. In addition to the heir, the royal family also had a daughter. Their parents never tired of noticing how cute and beautiful their children were. The only daughter of the noble family, Belle was not actually the young master's real mother. Jamie's father was the head of the royal family, Welton, one of the 5 sword masters of their kingdom named Arjano. Although he has a really impressive status and is a formidable and powerful sword master, he is crazy obsessed with his wife and his children. Sister Sarah was much younger than her promising brother. Jamie got along well with her and played along in every possible way. During every meal together, he could not avoid her attention. Playing his role perfectly, he brought great joy to the parents, who were very proud of their children. This was repeated almost every day. The great magician behaved like a child, while in fact he would like to enjoy solitude. Returning to his room was a real relief for him. It was hard for him to get used to this lifestyle. Over time, it became easier, because he had a greater variety of activities. This mansion didn't seem like such a bad place to him. His family's private library was the most interesting place. In addition, Jamie acquired an interesting pet. When alone, he could call him to his aid. Also, thanks to the fact that he was reborn, he had a new ability. His hatred for the 12 gods did not fade away, because they continued to exist even after 50,000 years. Because he was so young, he was not yet capable of much. Since there was little information about dark magic during the era of his rebirth, time was on his side. Feeling hatred for the 12 gods, he dreamed of how to get rid of their annoying existence. But at one point, his happy loneliness was interrupted by a visit from the nanny. The woman was talking about how it was time to read children's books with her mistress. Each time these words seemed like torture to him, but because of his young age, he was forced to demonstrate politeness so as not to reveal his secret. Sometimes playing the sweet boy was so hard that he missed the times when he was sealed in the god's trap. Unlike him, his younger sister, as always, was delighted with this way of spending time. But as soon as the reading of the book began, Sarah fell asleep. After reading a fairy tale about a magician named Heinz, a caring mother asked if the children liked it. With a smile and a sparkle in his eyes, James said that he wanted to become as cool a magician as the main character of the fairy tale. Mom didn't even doubt that he would achieve success, because despite the fact that he was only 9 years old, he defeated all 3 magic teachers who were hired to teach him. Gently placing her hand on the head of her beloved son, the lady said that his dad had invited the most powerful magician he knew to visit. After these words, the magician began to hope that he would finally meet a worthy master of our time. After reading a fairy tale with his mother, Jamie decided to do something more interesting and went to the library. Unfortunately for him, he couldn't find anything interesting, and yet another book on the use of mana turned out to be a waste of time. It was lunchtime, and Jamie decided to come before the nanny went to pick him up. But as soon as he left the library, he saw a strange stranger in front of him. The gray-haired man looked at one of the statues of their luxurious mansion and was surprised that the Welton family used a rare artifact as decoration in front of the dining room. The young master had never seen this person before. When the old man paid attention to him and greeted him, Diablo Wolfer, for the first time since his rebirth, saw such a large amount of mana that it seemed as if it was literally flowing out of the owner's body. Assessing the stranger by modern standards, the magician from the past assumed that in front of him was a master of at least the 7th level. He still didn't understand how he managed to get inside their mansion so unnoticed. Jamie was suspicious of him, although the old man did not seem hostile. The young master was of particular interest to the advanced magic master. While Jamie was trying to find out who he was and what he was doing inside their house, the old man analyzed his mana and was surprised that at such a young age he was already a mid-level master. Of course, the well-mannered heir to the royal family understood that he had started their conversation incorrectly, but he was infuriated by the calm behavior and gaze of the stranger. The 9-year-old magician was infuriated by this situation and decided that the stranger should be taught a lesson. The guy's behavior surprised the stranger, and he became curious what would happen next. Jamie couldn't believe that in response to his use of mana, a stranger would dare to do the same. He was filled with anger that some old man dared to test him. His pride was justified, because in his previous life, he was almost able to destroy all the gods with his own powers. Concentrating mana on his fingers, Jamie repeated the attack, which he was able to defeat all the magic teachers he hired. But in the end, this attack did not meet his expectations and did not bring any results at all. It became clear that the old man was significantly superior to him in mana reserves and the ability to use it for defensive purposes. Seeing what the heir to the royal family was capable of, the old man was simply in admiration and could not believe that such a capable magician was only 9 years old. Within a moment, a magician of at least the 7th level shouted that it was a good try, after which he began to form a counterattack. This magician was significantly superior to those whom the heir had encountered previously. His attack seemed quite serious. But there was one thing about this situation that kept Jamie from reacting seriously. He knew from the very beginning that this attack was not aimed at him, so there was no point in dodging. The old man was simply shocked that despite the demonstration of terrifying strength, the boy did not even blink an eye. Unexpectedly for both sides, Swordmaster Arjano intervened in their show of force. Dissatisfied with this situation, the gentleman turned to the guest and said that he had gone too far. After this, he turned to his dear son and asked if everything was all right. In response, Jamie began to act confused, and, in order to take revenge on the arrogant old man, he decided to demonstratively cry. As soon as Mr. Argano saw the tears of his beloved son, with a threatening tone, he asked the magician to step aside for a serious dialogue. The old man felt awkward, seeing that the boy's reaction was fake. In response, a master of magic named Marcus Linmill began to laugh loudly and said that for him this situation seemed like a very funny conflict, after which he admitted that he was very jealous of the Count. As it turned out, this magician was the person whom Mr. Welton hired to teach his son. Their conversation began with the Count's dissatisfaction with the fact that the magician behaved recklessly towards the heir of the Welton family. In response, the old man said with a smile while drinking tea that he knew about it. Hearing such carefree words, Mr. Arjano became seriously angry. The old man asked to listen to him and calm down, because the aura of the Swordmaster was putting great pressure on him. Marcus decided to start the conversation by asking how much the Count knew about his son. The man who spent all his free time raising his own children could not understand what he was talking about. As it turned out, the old man meant that he simply admired the genius of the heir to the Welton family. In response, the excited Count said that this was the reason why he entrusted him to the best magician he knew, but it was unclear to him why the old man suddenly attacked his son. The respected magician said that most likely the local Count really does not know everything about his son. Mr. Welton could not help but listen to his words about his son's magical abilities, because Linmel considers Macruse to be the most powerful 8th grade master among all living magicians. Based on this, the father began to worry that someone like him was unlikely to recognize his son, and that perhaps even Jamie was not as good as he thought. Noticing the gentleman's excitement, the old man warned him that he was absolutely serious. Unexpectedly for the Swordmaster, the 8th level magician declared that he could not take his son as his student, since he simply could not cope with him. With a sincere smile, the Grand Master of Magic admitted that Jamie was able to read all his actions. The Sword Master doubted his words, believing that it was impossible, no matter how smart his son was. To clear up his father's misunderstanding, the old man explained that his son immediately realized that his spell was flying by. The great magician admitted that he was surprised that the heir of the Welton family did not even flinch at a time when very strong magic was aimed at him. Then, with a very satisfied look, the old man stated that Jamie was already able to become a third-class magician, thanks to self-study alone. He believed that if they turned a blind eye to his body's limit, then his level would be even higher than level 4. The Grand Master seriously stated that the heir of the Welton family is not just a genius, but a real monster who does not need any teacher. He believed that the son of a great swordsman only needed support, then he would continue to improve himself. After these words, he declared that the Count had given birth to a legendary 9th-grade magician. As expected, the Count was simply shocked by the words of the Grand Master. After that, the magician began to stand up and ask for forgiveness for attacking the heir of the Welton family. He stated with hope that with the advent of such talent, great discoveries await the whole world. After the solemn announcement, the old man began to use teleportation magic and disappeared. Count Arjuna Welton was left alone. He wasn't prepared to hear something so shocking, so he wanted to think about what to do next. Evening came, the great magician from the past, who was reborn in the body of the heir of the Welton family, once again felt incredible fatigue due to his relationship with such a caring and attentive family. As soon as his mother found out about what happened between her son and the magician, she attacked him with tears and promised that she would deal with the old man who had offended Jamie. The guy believed that despite the difficult day, everything was not so bad, because he was able to see the real spell of this time. It wasn't that bad. The reincarnated Diablo Wolfer believed that the composition, technique, and balance of this spell were top-notch. But he was more impressed not by Mr. Marcus, but by his father, Count Arjuna Welton. With a smile on his face, Jamie said out loud that such a strong swordmaster was worthy of being his father. Suddenly for the heir, Mr. Marcus appeared on his bed, and with a sincere smile asked what made the young heir feel such joy. An experienced magician from the past was simply shocked by the sudden appearance of a magician in his room. The old man assumed that Jamie didn't notice him because he was too lost in his thoughts. Demonstrating his acting game, the guy got scared and fell to the floor, after which he panicked and asked what the strange old man had forgotten in his room. With a loud laugh, the old man was surprised that such a young genius could be scared so easily. First of all, Jamie asked in confusion how he got into his room. Rising from the bed, Marcus Linmel replied that he used teleportation. From the very beginning, Jamie understood that this was not an ordinary old man, but he could not believe that he could teleport to his room without any problems. Pointing his finger at the young man, the magician noticed that the heir was modest when he was near his father, and then asked why the guy behaved differently when he was in front of strangers. Rising from the floor, the heir answered displeasedly that family and strangers are completely different things. Then the old man approached the heir of the Welton family and suddenly said that he was not strong enough to train such a rare genius. After that, he held out the magical memoirs in his direction. The guy asked why the old man decided to give him this book. In response, the old man shocked him with the words that the magic that Jamie uses has long been outdated. Jamie began to feel awkward about this expression, which seemed humiliating to him. With a smile on his face, the old man thought that his reaction meant that he was touched by the gift. Talking about the book, the old man said that it contained many of his original spells and that the heir Welton would be the first to read it. Hearing his words, the guy immediately began reading, because he was filled with interest in what spells this great magician had created and how much the magic of this time differed from his own. Noticing the guy's interest, the old man decided to distract him from reading before saying goodbye. With a serious look, the great magician stated that he had high hopes for the future of the Welton family's young master. As he left the room via teleportation, he said that he was very interested in what the young genius would be like the next time they met. Saying goodbye to him, Jamie confidently declared that he would become much stronger than the old man thought. Magicians pass all the magic that exists in this world through themselves and then absorb it with their hearts. This is the most effective way to learn to control your mana. But there is one big problem. This is the restriction from the young master's body. Since Marcus Linmel called the heir's magic too old, he wanted to know what spells the great magician uses. The guy, hungry for knowledge, was delighted with what he saw. But after a few minutes, he closed the book, believing that it was too complicated. In order to use her knowledge, the magician must try hard to feel every particle of mana so that it can pass through the body and skin. The guy didn't understand who was even capable of such madness. In addition, he managed to find two disadvantages of the old man's method, and decided that the old methods could not be surpassed and that he should not bother himself with such training. But after a moment, he remembered that he himself was the great magician of the past, Diablo Wolfer. After this, his inspiration returned. With a smile on his face, he opened the book and said that the old man had opened his eyes. Jamie was determined that he would read every page of the precious book, which was far superior to any he had previously dealt with. To begin with, he decided to use outside help and called on his pet. Turning to the black pet, he asked him to spray some mana. Flying up, the little black one fulfilled his master's request. The first disadvantage of the old man's technique was that the absorption of grains of mana by one's body has a limit in which all proportions must be strictly observed. But the young genius did not have to worry, because this problem was solved by the pet. The blackling with whom he has a contract can spray the required amount of mana, so the problem with proportions has been solved. The second disadvantage was Jamie's body. He had a limit on the amount of mana his heart could take. But the inventive magician decided that this problem could be avoided by distributing all the mana to different parts of the body, and thereby avoiding the limit. Jamie was so engrossed in the process of studying the old man's skills that he did not notice how morning came. Seeing what was happening in his room, the worried nanny was forced to ask the Count for help. Mr. Arjuna Welton couldn't believe what he was seeing. He was shocked that mana was swirling around his son. He knew that Marcus had given Jamie something, but he couldn't understand how his son had learned to control mana in just one night. Overflowing with love for his son, he suggested that sweet Jamie had many hidden talents that they did not yet know about. Addressing the nanny, the gentleman asked not to worry and to assign someone to his door, because it was unknown when he would leave his room. In response, the caring nanny said that she would personally look after the young master so that my lord would not worry about his condition. When leaving, Arjuna Welton understood that his son would become a magician, not a swordsman. Still, he was genuinely excited about his son's prospects, even though Jamie wouldn't follow in his footsteps. Using his pet as an assistant, the magician continued to master modern methods. After 12 hours of hard training, he returned to reality, because he managed to comprehend such a complex method of mana control. At first, it was quite difficult to control the mana because its movements were unpredictable for him, but after several attempts, he achieved the result. Despite his success, it seemed to him that at this age his limit was the 4th level of magician power, judging by modern standards. Sighing heavily, he realized that he was close to reaching the 5th level, but the limitations of his body prevented him from reaching a higher level. Alternatively, he could improve his body using one of the methods available to him, but he was not going to risk it, because Jamie's body was too young and weak. The great magician from the past decided to be patient, because he is not limited in the time of development, because the gods will not go anywhere, and he has already gone too far to rush things. After that, with one wave of his finger, he used the invisibility ability on his pet. Since the black boy was upset by the sudden use of force on his body, Jamie explained that he wanted to meet his father, so he wanted to make sure that he did not find out about him. When he walked a little further, he was convinced that the pet's presence was too faint to realize that he was there. The guy was sure that his father would definitely not notice that he had Churnish. As soon as he approached the room where his father was, he heard that he had guests. The gentleman was surprised that such a busy man decided to visit him. The man replied that he just wanted to greet the local count. The stranger said that he knew that there had never been problems with religion in the lands of Haze, so he would like to thank the count for giving their cult of Genis a chance. In response, the swordmaster said that he believed that it would be very nice to help his population, so he decided to give their cult a similar chance. The cult member took these words ambiguously and asked what he meant. The count replied that he always strives only for the best, so he decided to make the cult of Genis the greatest in his lands, because now many people support it. The cult representative took these words as a kind of warning that the people of the land of Haze should not be considered great worshippers of the gods. He decided that he had to take the local count more seriously than expected. After this, Arjuna Welton suggested ending their conversation, suggesting that the cult representative was a very busy person. As they said goodbye, they exchanged pleasant compliments and wishes. Still, the cult member understood the situation perfectly. The head of the Welton family was forced to show sympathy, although in fact he was suspicious of the emergence of their cult. Being nearby, Jamie couldn't help but look at who his father was talking to. Looking at the unexpected guest, he only justified his guesses. The crescent moon sign with a yellow orb and the dark aura emanating from the cult member told him that this was Janus. The guy was filled with anger because this god dared to extend his influence to the place where he lives. It remained a mystery to him why his father suddenly decided to make his lands religious, and why, of all the religions, he chose the cult of Janus. The great magician from the past began to get seriously nervous because he couldn't let this happen. Due to certain circumstances limiting his freedom of action, he had few options to solve the problem. He understood that this religion was officially sanctioned by his father, so the only way to get rid of it was to make him drive them away. As soon as Jamie walked into the living room, his father's mood changed. With a smile on his face, Master Arjano asked how his son was doing. Jamie happily replied that he had dealt with everything. In response, the man suggested that his son really liked magic. Jamie confirmed his words. But instead of joy for his son, Arjano thought about something. Jamie decided to ask if everything was okay. In response, the Count said that he thought that he would grow up like an ordinary child. The fact is that he understood that living the life of a genius is not such a simple thing. When a child shows his talent, everyone begins to applaud him. However, when everyone gets tired of this talent, the same people begin to bully this child, so he was not sure whether his genius was truly a gift of fate, or vice versa. The thought of this made him nervous and move on to a more serious conversation. Addressing his son, he said that if he does not like doing magic, then he can leave this business and start doing something else. But if this decision is final, then he will not contradict him, and, as a father, will help in every way he can. With a carefree smile, Jamie asked him not to worry, confidently saying that he would never give up magic. The son's intentions were clear, so Arjano did not object. And yet, looking at him more closely, he did not understand how a 9-year-old boy could have so much mana. He could already feel the mana emanating from his entire body. But as soon as he realized that his son's magic was stored not only in his heart, but also in other parts of his body, he was in complete shock. He couldn't believe what he was seeing, so he asked how much his son had learned from the memoirs that Master Marcus had provided him. The guy calmly replied that he had managed to master all the knowledge that was shared with him. In fact, he also improved some of the techniques described in that book, but he could not admit it, so as not to arouse suspicion. Now Mr. Welton realized the full seriousness of what Marcus had told him. Seeing such a transformation in the distribution of mana, it was hard for him to imagine how much this child could learn in just one night. Now he had no doubt that Jamie was truly the one who could become the legendary magician of the 9th grade. It seemed to him that compared to his own son, he was a complete non-entity. An awkward laugh surprised the guy, and he asked if everything was okay. The father replied that he laughed only because at that moment he was especially proud of his son. Masterfully playing his role, the great magician laughed in response. Next, Mr. Arjano Welton carefully stroked his head. At that moment, the great magician felt awkward, because given his true age, he could not get used to being treated like a child. After this loving gesture, the father suddenly pointed his finger at his son's hidden pet and asked if he had managed to summon it himself. Hearing this, Jamie got scared and hesitantly asked if his father could really see him. He didn't understand how this was possible, because he made sure that he had cast invisibility on the little black one, and even checked how difficult it was to sense his presence. The father closed his eyes and, imagining the pet, showed its approximate size and suggested that it was something similar to a bat, but with a more rounded body. Jamie really didn't expect his father to be so advanced in sensing mana. He still hoped that he didn't realize what the pet was doing with dark magic. As soon as Mr. Weldon found out that his son had made this bat with his own hands, he attacked him with a big hug and again shouted that he was proud of his success. Jamie was devastated as he left the living room. He is incredibly tired of his parents loving him so much. After another tiring dinner, the guy returned to his room and locked the door. That evening, he decided to take action. Wearing a long cloak with a hood to hide his true identity, the guy summoned his pet, which without further ado took on a winged form. The great magician could not allow the cult to be located on his territory, so he decided to find out their motives on his own. To do this, he used the power of his pet and left the mansion to check the events in the city. Members of the criminal organization Laval were operating in one of the alleys of their city. The guy with purple long hair named Philip was a little nervous because of the boss's order. His comrade Jans agreed with his fears, believing that the boss would make any sacrifice just to achieve his own goals. The man with the scar on his right eye understood that the local count allowed their organization to coexist peacefully with everyone only until they crossed a certain line. But he was sure that everything would come to an end as soon as they began to carry out the human trafficking plan. In response, Philip said that if they were lucky, they could escape quietly and no one would catch them. Since it was a matter of luck, his comrade could not accept such risks. Remembering the Count's love for his own children, Jans declared that they would end as soon as he learned that they were using other children to trade on his own lands. He understood that if this happened, then all criminal organizations would be destroyed by the hands of one of the strongest sword masters in the kingdom. In response, Philip suggested that their boss was simply confident that they would not be caught. But Jans believed that jokes with the swordmaster were bad and would not lead to anything good. They didn't have much options. Philip believed that they could save themselves either by escaping or by surrendering their boss to the police. Nevertheless, they agreed on the idea of escaping so as not to violate the rule of the underworld, which states that people who have a certain responsibility in the mission should under no circumstances surrender the organization or reveal their plan of action to third parties. Jans asked if his comrade could suggest some kind of plan, given that no matter how large these lands are, the boss's people will search every corner to find them. Philip replied that it was better to take a risk, because it was simply impossible to avoid the wrath of the sword master. They simply had no other way to survive except to escape. While they were discussing how crazy it was to engage in the slave trade in this place, they were already being followed. Of course, it was Jamie, and he heard everything they were talking about. At one point, he decided to show himself, and the guys realized that their plan was now at risk of failure. Jans immediately asked who was the one who interfered in their affairs. In response, the young magician arrogantly said that the bandits were in no position to ask questions. His words got on the nerves of the self-confident Jans. He shouted that if the stranger decided to remain silent, then he was finished. Both bandits rushed to attack, but as soon as they tried to strike, their enemy suddenly disappeared. Looking around, they could not see where he had gone. Within a moment, they began to feel such strong fear that they could not move. The same stranger appeared right in front of them, and in a terrifying voice asked what they were talking about. An incredible amount of mana surrounded him, extending his hand towards them. He said with an evil smile that he would like to hear more details. Within a moment, the technique of dark magic began to influence the minds of the bandits, so that they could not move. As a result, Philip and Jans completely obeyed the young magician. They told everything they knew about this mission. Jamie was surprised that those guys decided to do what his father despises most. It seemed strange to him that those idiots would hope to succeed in such a matter while being in a land where a great sword master was a count. What irritated him most of all was the fact that now not only the gods manipulate people as they please, but people themselves dared to do something similar, no different from those disgusting creatures. It also seemed strange that the boss of these bandits would decide to do something like that, even though he probably knew his father's character very well. He had an extremely bad feeling about all this. Using dark magic, Jamie began to use mind control again. He ordered these guys to go to the Count's estate and tell him everything they knew. The bandits, who fell under the influence of magic, unconditionally began to carry out the order. The young master understood that the morning on their estate was going to be stormy. He managed to do a good job of pushing his father to investigate the activities of certain groups that are associated with the occultists. Having done all that was necessary, Jamie once again turned to using his pet's wings to return home, but a moment later 2 bodies flew past him. Looking around, he realized that these were the same guys he had used to tell his father the plan of the cult. Afterwards, the culprits of his failure appeared. There were 4 people, but the most suspicious was the stormy man in the middle. Jamie thought he had already done it, but because of some crazy person, the work only increased. Using dark magic again, Jamie asked the stranger how he dared to touch the people who were following his orders. After that, a huge seal appeared behind him. Using his magic, he said that he forbade his charges to die until they carried out his instructions. After this, the bodies of the recently mortally wounded bandits began to recover, filling with the mana of their new master. An employee of the rival criminal organization named Han Ni was surprised that another person was involved in this case. So he asked his wards to drag those 2 unfaithful guys and a strange guy in a raincoat to his feet. To hurry up his bandits, he threatened them with violence if they did not begin to carry out the order. The young master was surprised by the bandits' self-confidence. They stole the bodies of traitors to their organization right before his eyes. With tears in his eyes, Philip asked a magician he did not know to help him. The cruelty of the criminals who live on his father's lands drove Jamie crazy. He hatedly called Han Ni a scoundrel and asked how he dared to do such a thing on these lands. With loud death threats, the criminal used magic and attacked Jamie, hitting him in the head. With a terrifying thirst for blood, he continued to attack the body of an unfamiliar magician who had interfered in the affairs of their organization. Using his strength, the self-confident villain completely destroyed the body of the guy in the cloak. But at the same moment, the ward, scared to death, asked what harm their brother Finn had done to him. Han Ni did not understand what he was talking about because he dealt all these furious blows to the stranger. Within a moment, Jamie appeared next to him and asked if this was really all he was capable of. The frightened Han Ni was frightened by the terrifying voice and looked around, asking what was going on. After that, with a scary look, Jamie asked if it was fun to kill his partner. Shocked by what was happening, the villain realized that if his opponent was still alive, then all those attacks he carried out were aimed at someone else. In addition, it was the first time in his life that he had seen such an ominous aura emanating from the magician's body. Within a moment, Jamie was right in the face of his opponent and said intimidatingly that the villain was taking on too much, being only a third-class magician. As expected, such words greatly hurt his opponent's pride. Realizing the danger of the situation, Han Ni resorted to using a third-class spell called Buster. He believed that although it could not compare with a fifth-class magical explosion, it would be enough to incinerate the stranger's small body, thereby leaving no traces. But as soon as he tried to use his power, he found himself under the complete control of the young master, who suggested that he listen to one thing about how the human mind works. By controlling the senses and body of his enemy, Jamie eerily said that people feel completely helpless when faced with those who are many times stronger than them. He admitted to his puppet that this is precisely why he loves to manipulate those who are much weaker than himself. Although the great mage of the past, Diablo Wolfer, had not yet been able to regain even a small part of his former strength, he easily subdued this third-level mage. With no chance of resistance, Han Ni fell face first onto the surface. The wards of this villain were simply shocked that the little magician easily defeated the leader of their group. Realizing that there was a real monster in front of them, the trembling bandits decided to flee, but it was already too late. Using his power, Jamie said that they should take this defeat as ordinary bad luck. Within a moment, the dark magic of the young master captured the bodies of the villains. Clenching his fist, Diablo Wolfer used destruction magic. Having dealt with the minor villains, he returned to their group leader. Raising Han Ni's head as he lay on the ground, he ordered him to answer all his questions. The third-level magician completely submitted to the will of his new master, having lost control over his body and mind. He repeated the same thing as the previous guys. True, Jamie had already heard this and was wasting his time, because this information should be conveyed by Philip and Jans. The question that remained was what to do with Han Ni. Although the magician stopped his death, his soul was almost destroyed, so he was unlikely to be able to hold out for much longer. Since he is only a third-class mage, he can be turned into an undead. But if this is done, he will quickly become unusable due to his soul. On the battlefield, such an undead would look quite normal, but using it in a peaceful place seemed far from the best idea. Based on the circumstances, the brilliant Jamie decided to use a different method. The third-level mage is a vessel of a good amount of mana. The guy took advantage of the situation and absorbed his powers. Due to his human characteristics, the mana was overflowing with impurities, but that was not bad. Diablo Wolfer did not expect that at that age, he would be able to consume such an amount of mana. The second question was how to deal with ridiculous charges. The magician had already given them some of his mana, but he understood that they were unlikely to be able to hold out in this state for long. I had to turn to the abilities of the little black one. Those guys had unfinished business, so Diablo Wolfer gave them a chance to enjoy life a little longer. He turned to necromancy, an ability that allows him to revive the dead, but with some peculiarities. In fact, a person resurrected by this power is a complete contradiction to the laws of nature. From that moment on, his servants took on a new appearance. They were ordered to live despite the fact that they had already died once. Now they were ready to carry out orders. Although Jamie was able to use the ability of necromancy from his previous life, this time there were some strange things. Some black smoke remained around the bodies of his servants, and the guy thought that he might have made some mistake. Blackie began to get nervous and squeak pitifully, fearing that it was he who was to blame. Dissatisfied with his behavior, Jamie asked not to take everything to heart and not to think too much. The guy thought that his pet actually did everything perfectly. Trying to calm himself down, he played with it like a rubber toy, guessing that he himself had done something wrong. Diablo Wolfer was depressed, as he found it hard to admit that he had made a mistake in using magic. Usually he doesn't get attached to his past achievements, but this time it was still a shame that his skills were starting to be lost. Because of this strange and suspicious aura, he understood that their use was impossible and they would attract the attention of the guards, so the only way out of the situation was to simply get rid of the unsuccessful servants. In addition, Returning to the cult of genus will also not be possible, because their magic users will also suspect something. But the little black one did not agree with his reasoning. The dark pet sat on the magician's shoulder and began to behave very strangely. Jamie yelled at him for starting to bite his master's cheeks. It turned out that he just wanted to attract attention to himself before proceeding to resolve the issue. Sitting on Janz's head, he began to absorb the dark aura that surrounded his body. Diablo Wolfer had never seen a pet do something like this before. As it turned out, he had no need to absorb excess mana, because in a past life, the owner's magic was more rational. The small black creature barely absorbed the entire volume of the dark aura of the undead. Now Philip and Jans were ready to carry out orders. But the situation has improved. Blackie was simply filled with mana and felt a certain heaviness. The young master thanked him for his work and praised him for successfully correcting the spell error. Next, it was time to name your first 2 servants. Jans received the new name Azard, while Philip acquired the name Rise. The young master approached his servants, but their reaction indicated that they did not understand what was happening at all. Jamie decided to give them some time to come to their senses. After a few minutes of silence, the undead began to look at the world around them more adequately. Azard was the first to start the dialogue. He assumed that in front of him was the person who brought him back to life. Jamie powerfully confirmed his suspicions. Azard could reason from his previous experience, so he was shocked that in front of him was such a powerful magician who looked no more than 10 years old. In addition, he noticed his huge and ominous aura. It seemed to him that this was some character from a book he had read when he was little. The young master looked like an ominous creature that should not exist in the world. He felt that this magician could challenge the whole world himself. Of course, Diablo Wolfer couldn't help but notice his fear. He guessed that the servant thought his master looked like a demon lord. His words turned out to be an accurate description of how he was perceived by these guys. Rise gathered all his determination together, because he no longer had anything to lose. He loudly stated that he had no idea who was in front of them, but in his eyes, the young master definitely didn't look human. Jamie was surprised by his reaction. The servant was acting too aggressively, and it seemed that he did not understand that his master was in front of him. He suggested that there were some flaws in his spell, but that didn't mean he would just turn a blind eye to it. With one wave of his fingers, he demonstrated his superior strength, and Rise instantly found himself face down on the surface. When Jamie began to walk towards him, the servant's whole body began to tremble from the inability to resist. With an intimidating look, the young master said that he would forgive the servant just this once, but threatened that if he raised his voice at him again, he would not get away with it. The chilling speech made the former villain take his words seriously. After communicating with one servant, the young master warned the second that this also concerned him. This is what the subjugation of the souls of dead people is. It didn't matter whether they wanted it or not, but as long as they were bound by the contract, their lives belonged to the magician. This is the whole essence of the dark magic that Diablo Wolfer used. Before leaving, the guy remembered an important detail. He asked the servants not to think that he was a demon lord. Polite Hazard asked permission to find out who their master was. With a sweet and harmless expression on his face, the young master called himself an ordinary dark magician, although he could not clarify that he was also the one who once tried to kill the gods, and having been reborn into a new body, he considers this goal his only reason for existence. Trying to keep a low profile, he ordered his servants to keep an eye on the Church of Genus and gather all information related to it. In addition, he wanted anyone who might know something about human trafficking to be brought to him. He wanted him to be the one to tell his father everything for them. Faithful Rise and Azard bowed to the young master. When there was silence, they looked up. It turned out that the young master had already left. At that moment, they were finally able to breathe a sigh of relief. After looking at each other, they began to remain awkwardly silent. The guys understood that they could not disobey the owner's order, so they decided to do as he said. Returning home, the little black one began to worry about the undead, but Jamie assured him that everything would be fine with them because they were too scared, so they could not easily disobey his orders. In addition, those guys will give information to his father so that he can personally solve the problem of the slave trade. Afraid of getting involved in trouble, the pet again began to pull the master's cheeks, and dissatisfied with this treatment, Jamie explained that he could not continue to allow the cult of Genus to do this on his lands. Jamie invited the little black one to return to the mansion, but something unexpected happened. The magician did not even notice how someone suddenly approached them, after which they hit his back. The stranger himself was surprised that he managed to crash into someone in the middle of an empty road. The young master was a little furious about the situation. Looking at the stranger, he called him blind, after which he was surprised that he was also a child. In response, The stranger shouted that the impudent young man was still also a child. Diablo Wolfer felt uneasy when he remembered that he was really only 9 years old. Turning around, he arrogantly said that this time he would let the stranger go, after which he asked him to be more careful in the future. The strange behavior and speech of the same boy tensed the stranger. In response, he furiously whispered under his breath that the impudent guy thought he was an adult, although he didn't even have a single gray hair on his head. As soon as the little black one heard this, he jumped on his master's head and transformed his hairstyle. Jamie was surprised by the sudden commotion. After looking around, he realized that the reason for his pet's behavior was the words of an offended child. Blackie did this only because the stranger joked about his hair color. Diablo Wolfer did not understand how Blackie dared to climb on his head and where his manners disappeared. Still, he decided to take this situation more seriously, so he turned to the boy in a terrifying voice and threatened that he should watch his language if his life was dear to him. Apologizing, the stranger began to run away. Having fulfilled the wish of his restless pet, Jamie calmly returned home. Still, the guy decided to punish his pet. Chernish felt guilty, while the owner asked him to think about his action, after which he warned that if he did something like that again, he would not get off so easily. Nevertheless, the beast, summoned by dark magic, forgot about manners due to the long absence of his master. Falling face first into the pillow, Jamie sighed heavily, tired because he had used more strength than he had originally thought. He understood that now he would have much more to do, and his easy and carefree life would come to an end. Yet an enemy will soon appear on his lands. This is the god he hates most, Genis. Even though Diablo Wolfer had not yet been able to regain even a fraction of his former strength, he did not care how strong the enemy cult would be. He promised that this time he would get rid of all enemies completely. Meanwhile, Azard and Rees arrived at the villain's lair. One of his comrades was shocked that he was still alive, while his new master's servant asked to know where the elder was. That frightened guy could not understand why his comrades were still alive, because Han Ni was going to personally get rid of them. He couldn't believe that guys who didn't have magic were able to defeat a third-level magician. But Hazard had no intention of playing with old friendships. He defiantly smashed the wall near the head of his old comrade with his bare fist, and said that he would not repeat his words twice. The villain named Pip did not understand what had happened. He did not see the rest of his comrades, who would certainly have caused a major scandal if they had found out that Jans had returned. The confused villain understood that these guys had dealt with the rest of the bandits, so in order not to risk his own life, he assured them that he didn't even have a clue where his older brother had gone. But a moment later he was shocked to learn that Philip also survived. The rebel Philip, with the new name Rise, asked if Pip was sure of what he was saying. Confused Pip, without even thinking about what he was saying, said with a trembling voice that he was not lying, and this could be clarified with the others. True, the rest were already dead, but oh well. By the look of Rise, it was clear that he was furious. He was already fed up with everything. He needed to find his old boss in order to carry out the master's order, since the elder brother knows about everything that is happening in the city, so there is a great chance that he has some information about the Church of Genis. Turning seriously to his old comrade, he asked him his own opinion about where the boss might be. Scared to death, Pip understood that he needed to give them some kind of normal answer, because otherwise they would immediately blow his head off. In a frightened voice, he suggested that since the boss liked girls and liked to drink, then he could explore all the bars that were nearby. Hazard and Rise agreed that this was a pretty good idea, so they decided to go to the nearest bars. Seeing the guys leaving, Pip sighed with relief. But a moment later, Hazard punched him in the face pretty well. He returned because he remembered the gentleman's request to find any witness. It seemed to him that Pip was suitable for this role, but did not know where to hide him, so he suggested that he could simply tie up the poor fellow and throw him in the forest nearby. Rise praised his option, but said it would be easier to lock it in the basement of the house. They spent too much time gathering information, so they decided to hurry up and find the boss. Meanwhile, one of those who were absent during the actions of Azard and Rise returned to their lair. Looking around, the guy could not understand what had happened. All the guys around were unconscious. The child Jamie encountered on the street worked for these bandits and thought that he would be beaten again because he did not fulfill the quota. But as it turned out, he was no longer in danger. In this case, he decided not to risk his own life and ran away so that the others would not suspect anything. The next morning, Jamie woke up later than usual. This was not surprising, since he had to begin his actions, and it turned out to be tiring. He understood that now he would not be able to avoid meeting his enemies. On the way to the dining room, he apologized to his pet that he was going to call him away so that he would not catch the eye of his father. As soon as he approached the entrance, he asked his parents how they slept. With a smile on his face, Arjuna wished his son good morning. In response, Jamie was surprised that his mother had not yet arrived. As it turned out, she was hiding behind the door and suddenly jumped out at her son. Acting out the role of a cute child, an excited Jamie asked how she was able to hide so unnoticed. Of course, this question was played out. Mom started laughing because her son was scared by her joke, but the guy boldly declared that he instantly came to order when he realized that it was his beloved mom. After that, his mother and sister hugged him, continuing to talk about their love. Then they started breakfast, and this time Sarah sat next to her parents, and not her brother. Mom continued to hug her and play even at the table, showing a huge amount of love for the child. Watching this, Diablo Wolfer thought that he himself wouldn't mind touching his little sister's cheeks, because children's cheeks are always soft. But as soon as he realized what he was thinking about, he nervously hit his head on the table, realizing that a great magician who was going to destroy the gods should not get used to such a quiet life. After finishing breakfast, the parents began to discuss their plans. Noticing this, Jamie wondered what would happen the next day. The father was surprised that the children did not know yet. The mother made the excuse that because her son made her worry, she completely forgot about it. Most likely, she was referring to Jamie's technique, which he used to accumulate mana. Knowing her character, he understood that she was very worried about him. Like a polite and well-mannered son, Jamie apologized with guilt for such behavior. Mom carefully replied that she understood that nothing would happen to him, but after a moment, she began to show her excitement and stated that if her son continued to exhaust himself like this, then she might faint somewhere in the corridor because she would become too sad. After another apology, Jamie decided to return to the previous issue, and as it turned out, the Welton family were going to go to the ball together. It will be a huge ball, organized by Earl Simon and Earl Welton, and almost all the nobles living in the north of the Seldom Empire will be present. Mommy was happy that the children would attend such a noble event for the first time, while Diablo Wolfer understood that his precious free time would soon end. The evening of another boring day has arrived. After dinner, the young master again used his pet's wings to visit his servants. Previously, he indicated to them the meeting place, so he went to one of the buildings in the city. As soon as the master entered, his servant stood up from the table. Removing the hood, Jamie asked if they had done what he asked. Feeling guilty, an emotional Rise apologized for the fact that they were never able to find out anything about the genus cult, since it was created not so long ago. Hearing his answer, Diablo Wolfer realized that even the members of Lival were unable to obtain any information in just one day. After that, he inquired about the progress regarding the second assignment. Everything was fine with the second assignment, and the guys introduced their friend named Pip to the master. As soon as that guy saw the color of the young man's hair, he immediately realized that the Welton family itself was taking care of their affairs. Rise introduced Pip as one of the members of Laval's cult, who in fact knew that Han Ni was going to kill them. They thought that this only proved that this guy was not an ordinary pawn. Since Pip didn't say anything, Jamie decided to conduct the interrogation using his own methods. To begin with, he asked to untie the prisoner's mouth. As soon as they did this, Pip took a deep breath of air. After that, he began screaming to beg the gentleman to spare his life, saying that he knew nothing, but would get any information if he was released. Looking up, he couldn't understand why he was trembling so much at the sight of some child. As it turned out, he felt an endless amount of its terrifying power. In response, Jamie said that he had no reason to kill him, and that he just wanted the prisoner to carry out his orders. Lowering his head, Pip tearfully shouted that he would do whatever he was ordered to do, even find the boss in order for his life to be spared. After young Mr. Welton called the poor guy too loud, he was speechless. Then, Diablo Wolfer put his hand on the villain's head, and using his dark magic, gave him the order to go to the Count's estate and tell him about everything that their organization was doing. When the guy got to his feet, it became clear that he no longer controlled his consciousness. He silently left Reese's house and walked towards the Welton family's mansion. Addressing the servants, Jamie asked them not to worry about the prisoner, saying that the Lival organization was unlikely to catch him. At least he was sure that his father would be the first to deal with him. Then he ordered the guys to leave the city and hide somewhere. Noticing such a reaction, the little black one whispered something in his owner's ear. Jamie agreed with his remark and asked the guys in surprise why they were not interested in the reasons for such an order. Bowing low, the servants replied that the master's orders are the law and they cannot disobey them. After this, Rise admitted that he most likely understood their master's motives. Most likely, they guessed what situation they were in, because after hearing information about the plans of the criminals, Mr. Welton would probably destroy the Lival organization and would like him not to find out about the existence of Rise and Hazard. As Jamie left the building, he warned the servants that he would be gone for several days, so the boys should be quiet until he returned. Doubts continued to worry the guys, and Rise ran out into the street. He shouted after his master. Jamie turned around and asked the servant in surprise what had happened. As it turned out, Philip's personality wanted to know who they ended up becoming. He knew that they were dead, and also that there was no way to fix it. Besides, he didn't even want to go back to his previous life. He was sincerely glad that he had become stronger. But he could not have peace until he knew what kind of creature he had become. Rise surprised the young master with his curiosity. He assumed that he was now a top-ranking undead. In response, Jamie began to laugh and Rise felt awkward, which is why he apologized for his stupid question. But the young master clarified that he was laughing because people usually ask whether they have become undead or not, while Rise surprised him with his easy perception of reality. These guys seemed like an unusual find to him. Diablo Wolfer had never met such servants. Usually everyone refused to accept that they had become monsters and had lost their humanity. But Rise and Hazard looked like they could be really valuable players. Nevertheless, the young master explained to the guys that now they are the most ordinary zombies because he saved their appearances before they died. After they became zombies, their strength also increased, so now they are much more powerful than ordinary people. Still, this news upset Rise a little, and he hoped that at least after death, he would gain special power. To support them, the young master said with a smile on his face that everything depended only on them, and perhaps they would someday become top-level zombies. Of course, such a speech greatly inspired the guys. Then the gentleman and his roomers politely said goodbye. Returning home after a long walk, Jamie asked his pet not to consider his servants pathetic. He thought they were quite interesting and very reminiscent of a certain person from his past life. That night, the Welton household was in turmoil as one of the members of Laval, a huge criminal organization based in Hayes, decided to betray his own association. The Count had to stay late to deal with some matters. Therefore, only 3 of his family went to Regan, the largest city located in the east. In fact, Jamie could already get to this place using only the teleportation skill, but he decided not to attract too much attention and used the usual transport. He was already much stronger than before. In addition, thanks to the study of the old man's book, he learned that magic has made incredible progress and is now radically different from what it was in his time. But the problem is that he has no idea how much time has passed since his death. The events that took place after his death were described in history books. They mentioned an army of demons attacking humans led by a demon lord. Despite some very high-profile events, there have been no wars for the last several hundred years. Considering all this, it could be said that a long time had passed since his previous life. Analyzing the situation, Diablo Wolfer understood that his enemies were never able to unite. For him, it was even better because apart they are much weaker. But for the immediate future, their family's ball was the priority. As soon as they entered the city, Jamie could not hide his surprise at its beauty. Mom explained with a smile that this is the most advanced city in their kingdom, and it is impossible to find a place through which such a huge amount of money passes as through Regan. Now Jamie understood why their support had such a strong impact on the development of the center of their lands. After some time, they almost arrived at the palace. Jamie continued to act modest and admitted that he wanted to see Count Simon so much that his heart was about to jump out of his chest. As usual, hugging her son tightly, the mother called him cute and asked him not to worry. She assumed that Jamie admired Uncle Simon so much because he too wanted to become a magician. In response, tired of her hugs, he agreed with her words. Mom explained to her son that Count Simon is simply incredible, because being the same age as his father, he was already a 7th-grade magician, and along with him is one of the 2 leaders of the Eastern Council of the kingdom's nobility, and he is also the lord of the city of Regan. The magic of the local city, according to people, is similar to the Red Lotus, which is why he was called the Red Lotus Magician. They say that with one spell he can kill 1,000 people at once. Hearing this, Jamie asked what kind of person the Count was. Mom thought deeply before answering the question. The first thing that came to her mind was to say that the Count's hair was as red as his blood. In fact, the young master didn't care about these things. But the power by which the Count could take so many lives was what really interested him in his conversation with Simon. His conversation with Marcus Linmel was a bit useless because it was too short, so he hoped that with the help of the Count he could find out more about modern magic. Mom was the first to get out of the carriage, and then she called the children. They had already been met by the polite butler of this mansion. He assumed that this was the wife of Count Welton. Having convinced himself of this, he offered to escort them to their chambers. The chambers for their entire event were simply huge. The butler also said that if they had any wishes, they could contact him. The guests admired Count Simon's care. They even allocated a separate room for the young gentleman. Jamie was glad for such attentiveness, since he could not even imagine how difficult it would be to be with his family all this time. Addressing the children, the mother asked them to take things apart and return to her. A few minutes later, she was already the center of attention of the maids. They took care of her hair for the ball. The woman looked simply incredible, and her son could not help but express his admiration. Hearing this, my mother was very happy with his words. In front of the maids, she demonstrated the relationships within their family. The mother almost pounced on her son to hug him, but one of the maids politely asked the madam to control herself, otherwise her hair might lose its look. She seemed to take it too personally and couldn't believe that now she couldn't hug her beloved children. Meanwhile, young Mrs. Sears also finished her preparations. As expected, the mum could hardly contain her emotions, while Jamie said Sarah looked like a doll. The girl was especially pleased with her older brother's compliment. Still, they both agreed that these clothes were not very comfortable, but agreed that they would tolerate it in this form until the very end of the holiday. In the end, Jamie was also forced to change his look a bit. Then they went to the banquet hall of Count Simon's castle. Everyone was surprised by the incredible size of this hall, and Jamie wondered if ballrooms always looked so luxurious. Sitting down in his place, the guy asked whether Count Simon really loved luxury so much. Mom replied that this was so, and most likely her son would be even more surprised when he met him in person. Then two beautiful ladies approached Madame Welton and immediately noticed her incredible appearance and gorgeous dress. Watching these fake conversations made Jamie feel disgusted, realizing that they were actually trying to suck up to their family. He had met many people like them in the past. In times not mentioned in history, such people flattered the gods whom he hated so much. Although this sight was disgusting, Jamie understood that his mother knew how to behave with such people. Meanwhile, the greeting of all visitors to Count Simon's castle began. The host of the ball, Raval Banner, introduced himself to them, who is also a member of the administrative bodies of the city of Regan. The entire hall immediately paid attention to him. With a smile on his face, Raval stated that the ball would begin soon, and it was time to take their seats. After this, he asked the visitors to prepare to welcome Count Simon and his entire family, who would be here any minute. A few minutes later, the organizer of the celebration appeared. Of course, the appearance of such an incredible magician brought the young master to his senses. He could not help but notice the pressure in the air from the appearance of an advanced master. A man with red hair greeted everyone present. The 7th grade mage impressed the young master with his presence. Count Simon hoped that everyone would enjoy the event. While everyone was discussing the appearance of the ball organizer, Jamie could not sit still. He was surprised that Count Simon was almost on the same level as the great magician Marcus Linmel, or even stronger. The Red Lotus mage truly exceeded all his expectations, and the guy was looking forward to their conversation. At the same moment, the Welton family was approached by the family of the local count. As expected, Mrs. Welton exchanged polite greetings with them. The magician was surprised that his fellow swordmaster had not arrived. Then he learned that Mr. Argino would be closer to the knight, as he had some problems. After this, the count turned his attention to the children of his comrade. The caring mother introduced her son. After that, she introduced her daughter, Sarah. The children politely expressed their admiration for this event. Mrs. Simon could not help but be surprised at how sweet and well-mannered Mr. Argino's children were. While the two mistresses were talking to each other, the two magicians began to take a closer look at each other. Jamie was not interested in the ball, but the identity of the Red Lotus magician seemed very intriguing to him. In addition, he noticed how the count looked through every corner of his body. This was exactly what the young master wanted, so he fueled the count's interest in his personality and even showed good possession of mana. This demonstration aroused the interest of the great magician. He decided to personally meet the interesting child. Jamie said with a smile on his face that he admired the count's exploits. After this, the Red Lotus magician came closer to him and suggested that they talk later in a calmer environment. As soon as they agreed, the man interested in the talented young man decided to go further. The young master was satisfied. The count exceeded all his expectations, and he looked forward to their second meeting. The host of the event invited visitors to feel at home and enjoy the evening. Those present began to rise from their tables to find interlocutors and make good connections. Meanwhile, one red-haired youth took a closer look at the child of another noble family. Of course, he was interested in Jamie Welton. At Count Simon's table sat his wife and 2 sons. One of them asked his father what he thought about the son of Earl Welton. When asked what interested him in a 10-year-old child, the young master of the family, Simon, replied that although Mr. Jamie is young now, He will become the head of the family in the future, and it would be nice for them, as peers, to get to know each other. At that moment, the Count remembered the rumors that his son was showing leadership qualities among noble children. It seemed stupid to him that his son was trying to gain recognition in this way. However, he didn't mind playing along a little, so he called his son wise beyond his years. When asked by his son if he could tell anything else, the Count decided to remain silent. Instead of answering, he simply asked for an aperitif, thereby demonstrating that he was not going to give his youngest son any hints. The mother volunteered to support her son. She gently and caringly placed her hand on his arm, and then asked him to get along with young Master Welton, since their families had been allies for a long time. With a sly smile, the guy agreed with his mother. Miss Simon was glad that the matter had been resolved. After that, she decided to join the meal. But the young master continued to experience some tension. He was ashamed in front of his mother, because in fact he did not even intend to get along with the son of the Welton family. He couldn't wait to make the noble child of the Welton family crawl on his knees in front of him. All this was just for one purpose. He hoped that this would gain his father's recognition. The younger brother noticed his sly smile. He understood what was going on and looked forward to interesting events. The ball continued, and the Welton family decided to leave the table. Mom asked her son to be polite and be sure to make friends with everyone. As soon as she walked away, Jamie felt relieved. He had no interest in dating youngsters, so he decided to spend this time wisely alone. Hoping to find a secluded place in this mansion, he went outside. Looking around, he saw incredible gardens and realized that magic was not the only advantage of the Simon family. He thought about how the Count was able to reach such a high level. A moment later, he heard an unfamiliar voice behind him. Someone quietly approached him behind him. Because of this, the guy without hesitation turned to using magic. But as it turned out, he threatened some girl his age with his thunder spear. The young master behaved extremely rudely. Seeing that there was an ordinary girl in front of him, he canceled the effect of his magic. The little girl sighed heavily after such an unexpected greeting. Then she asked, with a trembling voice, whether it was possible to attack so suddenly. Jamie infuriated her with his response, saying that she had snuck up on him too suddenly. The young master continued to behave unexpectedly rudely, and without unnecessary manners, asked who she was and how she managed to sneak up on him. The girl's eyes began to sparkle. She thought that the young master was interested in her, but she doubted whether to tell him her name or not, saying that after his action, I somehow didn't want to communicate. As expected, Jamie found her speech unpleasant, as did the fact that she could suddenly appear behind his back. Still, he continued to act rudely and used his magic, shooting it near his leg. The girl was frightened by his behavior. The heir of the Welton family introduced this technique as air bullet, second-level magic. He warned that if her magical defense was not sufficiently developed, then such an attack would pass right through her, and, most likely, for a little thing like her, it would be fatal. The girl just wanted to meet the polite son of the Welton family, but she began to realize that she was dealing with a real psycho. Turning to the poor fellow, Jamie asked whether he should continue. The girl, in a panic, told him to stop. The situation forced her to stop being mysterious. She admitted that her name was Ash Vale. As it turns out, this is the eldest daughter of Viscount Vale, who is a summoner of spirits. Summoners are those magicians who have entered into a contract with the mysterious spirits of nature. There are not many summoners on the continent. They are considered outstanding magicians and can lay claim to the title of Baron. This explained the fact that she was able to silently get close to him. Jamie assumed that she used the spirit of the wind, because this was possible in his past life. What was more surprising was that she was the same age as him, but already a summoner. Usually, to unite with nature, people begin to study at the age of 10, but this girl apparently was born a genius, and when she starts studying, she will most likely be able to enter into a contract with the so-called king. After Miss Valley introduced herself, she asked the rude man to hurry up and introduce himself, because it was a mystery to her who dared to use such dangerous magic inside the Simon family palace. The guy was surprised by her question. He couldn't believe that she would try to interrogate him after revealing her identity. Judging by her character, he understood that she did not like to lose. Ash wanted to know who she was dealing with. Nevertheless, Jamie decided to satisfy her interest and introduced himself as the heir of Earl Welton. Hearing this, Ash was shocked, because in fact the Vale family are loyal vassals of Count Welton. Meanwhile, Mr. Argino had already managed to deal with the rival organization. Grabbing their leader, he admitted that his gang was annoying, but he didn't touch them, because that's all they did. Besides, sometimes they were even useful. Lifting his head with his boot, He furiously asked why they decided to repay his kindness by engaging in human trafficking. With a cold look, he stated that on his lands either a madman or someone who was tired of living could have taken on this. Believing that the rival leader wished to die, Mr. Welton promised that he would fulfill his wish. As expected, the leader of the criminal gang begged for mercy, but the trembling of his body did not evoke pity from Mr. Argino. Addressing his charges, he asked to get rid of the villain. The wards accepted his order unconditionally. Then he asked that the cart be prepared for immediate departure. Mr. Welton went to the ball. At the same time, his charges led the criminals to the place of execution. Meanwhile, they were already being followed by the true masterminds of human trafficking. Laval's organization failed them, so they had to start Plan B. The Welton family's young master continued to walk around the Simon family's palace, but he couldn't concentrate on his thoughts. He couldn't have privacy because of the intrusive Ash, so he got mad and nervously asked why she was following him. Jamie said that if her father was his father's vassal, it didn't mean anything. He asked the shy girl to stop communicating with him as if they were in a business relationship. As soon as he asked to be left alone and decided to leave, the girl grabbed his hand. Thus, she only pissed him off even more. Looking into her eyes, he asked her directly why she pestered him. The shy girl replied that she had met someone her age for the first time, so she wanted to make friends with him. Hearing this, the guy was confused. Silence began between them, because he didn't even think that this was the reason. He could still assume that she was talking about a servant, but he had no idea why she needed a friend in the first place. Sighing heavily, he thought that friends were very important for children her age. At the same time, he believed that this was not his problem, because such a friendship could take up too much of his time. Jamie decided to go further and advised her to find someone else, since he himself does not need friends. With tears in her eyes, Ash asked him to stop and called him a pest. Still, he managed to retire. He thought that she was still a child and did not understand that friendship, like any relationship, was irrational. He judged based on his past mistakes. Diablo Wolfer believed that if he had immediately gotten rid of such feelings, then in his past life, he would not have had to experience something terrible. This situation ruined his mood, because of it, he remembered something unpleasant. His solitude suddenly came to an end as he was once again distracted by his peers. This time it was 3 guys, with a red-haired young master standing in front of them. Seeing them, Jamie immediately realized that in such a daring tone, he was addressed by someone who was most likely the son of Count Simon. Instead of introducing himself to him, he asked him to repeat his address. One of the young master's impudent comrades, Simon, displeasedly asked how Welton dared address their brother in such a disrespectful tone. The second guy clarified that Jamie should have realized that Mr. Alf was in front of him. After that, they both shouted that this was the son and heir of Count Simon's family. In response, Jamie, with a sly smile, called them too noisy and cast a spell of silence. At the same moment, the 2 impudent guys were speechless. The Simon family's young master was confused by what happened. Confused, Alpha asked in an uncertain tone if he had actually cast a silencing spell on them. With a joyful laugh, Jamie was surprised that young Master Simon had heard of him and suggested that in that case, he was better than those naive monkeys. Calling the young master of the Welton family a smug bastard, a nervous Alf asked if he realized that he was older than him. In response, Jamie calmly asked him not to go into details and get straight to the point before he did the same to him as he did to his comrades. The situation was heating up and young Mr. Simon began to think about how to get out of this situation. Still, he decided not to make the situation worse. Turning to Jamie, he falsely admitted that he had not come to fight, because he wanted to socialize a little. Moreover, he went further, and even called him incredible for being able to use the silent spell. Despite his attempt to rectify the situation, Jamie replied that he had already listened to enough useless chatter, after which he invited the Earl's son to go his own way. As expected, Alf was simply shocked, and decided to make sure that the impudent person was exactly aware of who he had the honor of talking to. Nevertheless, he decided to come to terms with this refusal, believing that the time for a serious dialogue simply had not come. He asked the son of Earl Welton whether they would maintain contact in the future. In his defense, he asked to understand them correctly, citing the reason why they treated him this way in his rude answer when they met. Alf further stated that since in the future, they would become the core of the nobility of the eastern region, it would be nice for them to become friends at that age. Listening to the deceitful speech, Jamie thought that this red-haired guy was some kind of clown, because if he had not shown him the skills, then their company would have tried to make friends by force. The reason for his behavior was clear to him from the very beginning. Alf wanted to subjugate him to himself. Jamie was already annoyed that he allowed himself to listen to something so pathetic, so he decided to answer directly, and refusing the offer of friendship, stated that he did not care about his ideas and all that, after which he once again asked to be left alone. Upon hearing the refusal, Alf lost his temper and shouted that Jamie was a disgusting idiot that was getting on his nerves. After these words, he shouted that he would mercilessly trample to smithereens the frail magic of the self-confident heir of the Welton family. Pointing his magic wand at his opponent, he confidently declared that Jamie would have no choice but to serve him. In response, the heir of the Welton family did not even blink an eye. With a sly smile, he decided that it would be better to put him in his place now than to continue to play further. Turning to his opponent, Jamie said that in fact Alf initially planned to resort to brute force. In response, the vile heir of Count Simon admitted that this was true, after which he clarified that he changed the plan slightly after Weldon used his magic. In the end, he decided that he would act in his usual style. Diablo Wolfer felt some disgust at the duplicity of his opponent at such a young age. He wondered if he really thought adults would let him do whatever he wanted. Jamie was sure that his age would be in trouble if anything happened. With a confident smile, the arrogant Alf replied that there was no need to worry about it. After that, he took out a magic ball and said that no one would see them as long as he had this thing in his possession. Then he used the artifact and a seal appeared under their feet. Looking around, Jamie assumed that the enemy had a magical artifact of illusion in his hands. Alf replied that if Jamie knows what it is, then he really is a magician. Despite this, he was confident in his superiority, and shouted that soon the arrogant heir of the Welton family would beg for his mercy. At the same moment, he was surprised that the enemy decided to dispel the silence spell. Young Master Simon's servants were freed from the spell. They started talking about how hard it was to go through something like this, after which they returned to threatening the Welton family member, saying that he was tired of living and would not get away with this. While the angry servants of the young master threatened the heir of the Welton family, he admitted that the son of Count Simon possesses a very good artifact. Jamie called this situation extremely interesting. The self-confident Alf replied that he simply did not realize the situation he was in. Without letting him finish, Jamie cast a spell, calling on his enemies to suffer. His incredible pressure affected the self-confident boys so much that their noses began to bleed, and they could do nothing to ease their torment. With a sly smile, Jamie advised them not to turn off the artifact, because otherwise everyone would see them drowning in hellish torment. With a loud cry, they all fell to their knees while Jamie began to arrogantly laugh at their pathetic behavior. In the end, Alf still stopped using the artifact and remained the only one of the three who did not lose consciousness. His head began to hurt so badly that he could not control his nausea. This state seemed incredibly humiliating to him. His whole body was trembling at the thought that his opponent was a fourth-rank mage, while he was some kind of pathetic second tier. He didn't understand how things could turn out like this. Alf knew in advance that Jamie was born into a family of knights, so he believed that he was significantly superior to him in strength, because he could not come to the ball with a sword. He couldn't understand how someone his age had such magical power if their family specialized exclusively in swordplay. He assumed that this was about an exceptional talent that he himself did not have. Rising from his knees, he was filled with hatred. He loudly declared that he would not forgive his enemy, and would not leave it just like that. Consumed by rage, Alf, who believed that he had been defeated by talent, thought that he would do everything to crush his opponent and make sure that Jamie could never use magic again. As soon as the heir of the Simon family returned to the mansion, he again planned something insidious. This time his comrades were not so confident in themselves, because it was about stealing a magical instrument. The young master was dissatisfied with their excitement, and declared that the servants had no right to ask questions, but should silently and blindly follow the boss. At that moment, they were suddenly startled by the mention of Alpha's name. As it turned out, their younger brother Lennon approached them. The older brother asked why he was here and not at the ball. Lennon replied that this was due to recent events. Extending his hand with magical objects towards his older brother, Lennon said that he could not be calm when Alf was offended by the actions of some fool. Seeing the object in his brother's hands, Alf was alarmed, realizing that it was a very dangerous thing. With a smile on his face, the caring Lennon asked his older brother not to worry about where he got such a thing, after which he advised him to teach the Welton family dropout a lesson. Alf admitted that he was right because he was simply seething with hatred for the heir of another great family. Later that day, Mr. Arjano Welton finally arrived at the ball. Count Simon personally went outside to meet him. For the first time that evening, a sincere smile appeared on the face of the Count Magician of the Red Lotus. Arjano Welton was also glad to see him. He even laughed in surprise that the Count was greeting him in person. As soon as they exchanged pleasantries, the organizer of the ball invited the dear guest to go inside. The ball has already come to an end, and according to the red-haired Count, the event was a success as always. But what he wanted to discuss most during the ball was a meeting with young Mr. Welton. The father was interested to hear the great magician's opinion about his son. First of all, Mr. Simon noticed that the Welton family loves their children very much and admitted that he is very envious of his friend. Arjuna assumed that nothing had changed between them. Silence began as Mr. Simon did not want to remember this. However, he returned to the original topic and stated that Jamie not only surprised him, he was completely amazed by this meeting. Arjuna was not surprised by this answer. He understood that the Blood Lotus Mage was beating around the bush. In order not to waste time, the Sword Master politely suggested that his comrade considered his son talented. With an interested look, Mr. Simon replied that the word talent would not be enough. He thinks Jamie is the best he's ever seen. The great magician said that perhaps in the history of all mankind, there was no more talented person than the heir of the Welton family. Arjuna admitted that Marcus Linmel had the same opinion about his son. With some sadness, he said that he too knew about his talent when he was younger, but never thought of it as anything special. So he asked Marcus for a favor, because if someone is so talented in magic, then he should become a magician, despite the family traditions. With a smile on his face, Mr. Simon admitted that his friend's son would be very lucky to have such a strong teacher as Marcus. When he learned that the great magician refused this request, he treated this information with understanding, after which he declared that Jamie was an unsurpassed genius who would be able to achieve everything on his own, even becoming a legendary magician of the 9th rank. After this, he unexpectedly stated that he was envious that the young man was born more talented than himself, but on the other hand, he was very interested to see how far the high magician could advance with such power. Hearing his comrade's speech, Arjuna began to get nervous, realizing that he was heading towards a very dangerous topic. After this, Mr. Simon began to say that although people are weak, they were able to build a great civilization. On the other hand, he understood that compared to dragons, high elves, and other creatures, their magic was insignificant, like a breeze against a hurricane. The great magician believed that only through their unity could they withstand certain threats. Addressing his comrade, he stated that thanks to sword masters like him, they can still fight for life in this world. With an anticipatory smile, he asked his comrade what would happen if a magician of the 9th rank was born. With incredible enthusiasm, he declared that even such masters of magic as dragons would not stand next to him. Despite his comrade's concern about his words, he stated that with all his soul he longed for people to become the true rulers of this world. More modest and worried about the fate of his son, Earl Welton said that Mr. Simon's words were very arrogant. But the red-haired magician replied that even if his words were arrogant, it was not something bad, because they both knew about the forgotten history that was erased from the face of the earth. The story that Count Simon mentioned was a secret that was known only to a few on the entire continent. About 10,000 years ago, history disappeared due to some incident. Because of the extraterrestrial perfect creatures who decided to protect people from those secrets, Count Simon dreams that people will gain such power that it would prevent them from being kept in line. He wanted humanity to gain such power in order to prevent the history of their civilization from repeating itself, as well as the risk of their sudden extinction. After this tense dialogue, they said goodbye and went to rest. The caring father could not approach his son. Looking at him, he wondered whether such expectations towards Jamie would be justified. As a father who has such a talented child, he was very worried. It was hard for him to accept that his sweet and beloved son would one day become a support for all humanity. Arjuna Welton hoped that his son would grow up to be a just man. He was ready to give his all for this goal. In the morning, the event continued, and all the guests returned to the Simon family living room. Jamie was quite thoughtful, worried about the reason for his father's worries, but he wasn't going to use mind control just because he was just interested. In addition, he understood that his abilities were not yet sufficiently developed. His calm was interrupted again by Mrs. Ashe. As soon as she came over to say hello, an already puzzled Jamie asked her not to pester him with her obsessive behavior. In response, the girl slyly said that this time she had an interesting thing to do. After that, he loudly called his sister. Jamie understood that the situation was getting worse, because Ashe suddenly decided to increase the number of annoying interlocutors. To avoid such a pastime, Jamie tactfully stood up from the table and said that he was leaving, since he had no intentions of getting closer to them. In response, the girl shouted that he should at least meet his sister, since their families are so close. After her words, the eldest daughter, Rebecca Vale, came up to them and called her speech rude. She asked her younger sister not to discard formalities in conversation with the Count's son. Seeing her face, the guy froze in place and no longer paid attention to the argument between the two girls. Noticing his reaction, Ash started laughing and said that he had a crush on her older sister. Diablo Wolfer was devastated. He did not understand how Jane ended up here. He meant the beloved of his life, who was given to the gods for her own good. This is where the story of the great magician of the past begins, who was deprived of his human emotions. At the same moment, the young man who hated the heir of the Welton family most of all rushed towards them. Filled with rage, Alf was about to carry out his revenge. He again armed himself with dangerous artifacts, believing that he was now ready to put an end to his offender. But Jamie did not pay any attention to the heir of the Simon family. He again named the eldest daughter of the Vale family after the love of his life. Hearing this, the girl was confused, because she did not understand who she was talking about. Seeing the look of young Mr. Welton, Ash said out loud that he had fallen in love. The sneaky alpha decided to take advantage of this moment. He shouted that Jamie would now obey him, and then used the power of a rare magical artifact. Jamie was oblivious to this, while Ash was frightened by the danger of the spell that was directed in their direction. At the same moment, the frightened Rebecca rushed towards her sister. But a moment later, young Mr. Welton intimidatingly addressed the enemy, asking him not to interfere, after which he dispelled his attack. Alf Simon could not believe his eyes. He knew that the artifact created by his father, the Phoenix Ring, belongs to the 6th rank of fire magic. He was confused, not understanding how the 10-year-old magician was able to repel his attack. Releasing his mana, Jamie said with hatred that it was time to die. He used an ice spell on his opponent. Ice began to spread throughout the body of the heir of the Simon family. The frightened guy began to feel incredible cold and could not resist this force at all. Alf began to scream from the pain he was experiencing. Despite the fact that the enemy was suffering in front of everyone present, Jamie was consumed by his anger and had no intention of interrupting the spell. But at that very moment, the swordmaster approached him and said that this was enough. His father, Mr. Arjuna Welton, came to deal with his rage. He asked his son not to worry and said that everything is fine now. Having looked around, Jamie was convinced that the girl, who was the reincarnation of his beloved from the past, was unharmed. After this, he fell unconscious due to his father's use of magic. This incident took place in front of everyone present, and at the center of the events were the 2 counts and their children. Mr. Arjuna could not believe that Jamie was actually going to use such a terrifying spell on his peer. Communicating with his friend, at first he thought that he had made a mistake. But seeing the power of the spell and the impossibility of resistance on the part of the heir of the Simon family, he realized that these actions on the part of his son were serious, and if he could not stop him, then Alf could die. At the same time, Mr. Simon was not at all worried about his son, considering the actions of the future magician of the 9th rank to be amazing. He understood that the Alpha's magic was weak and less than half his own, but if the artifact had worked, then everyone present would have been burned alive. This outcome of events did not make him nervous, because he was filled with admiration for the future child, who would be able to fulfill his long-time dream. At the same moment, his wife threw a tantrum over the fact that Jamie almost killed their child, while the Count behaves completely calmly. Her words hurt the feelings of Jamie's mother. She asked the lady to express herself correctly, because the only one who tried to kill was Alf. As an argument, she stated that it was the heir of the Simon family who first attacked their son. In addition, she mentioned that Alf had prepared in advance and used the artifact in his direction. Her words were true and put the lady of the Simon family in an awkward position. With tears in her eyes, she tried to justify herself. Mrs. Sears Welton demanded that she speak to the end. Mr. Arjuna intervened in their conflict and told his wife that this was enough. Under the gaze of all the visitors, the woman who loved her beloved son tried to find support. Her husband took a few steps forward. She was sure that although he was strict, he would now decisively stand up for his child. But her hopes came to an end as soon as he admitted to all the visitors that their son had behaved rudely on such an important day. Addressing Madame Welton, he offered his sincere apologies. The lady did not expect that the Red Lotus magician would actually take the side of justice. She couldn't come to terms with the fact that she was surprisingly kind and couldn't be angry after such an apology. In response, Mrs. Welton thanked the Count for resolving the dispute and said that she would go to her room. Count Simon took this for granted and suggested that Arjuna also go and rest. As soon as he resolved the conflict, he apologized for ruining the evening in front of the rest of the guests. after which he asked them to return to their chambers and have a good rest. On such a note, the ball was over. There was silence in the hall, which could only be interrupted by the quiet whispers of those present. Turning to her husband, Mrs. Simon asked in a trembling voice why he did this. With tears in her eyes, she shouted that their son had suffered because of the actions of the heir of the Welton family. The moment she became rude, the Count, with a cold and piercing gaze, ordered her to remain silent. He said that there were a lot of unnecessary ears here, so she and her son should return to their quarters. Despite the madam's pleas, Mr. Simon still approached his son and assumed that he was trying to get his attention. With an angry look, he asked him not to remain silent. While the son trembled in fear of his father, the man asked if he thought that his actions would ruin their reputation in the eyes of the Eastern nobles and the entire kingdom. Raising his eyes, he could not hide his fear. Alf thought that he just wanted his father to notice him. Still, he couldn't find the courage to admit it, so he shouted that Jamie had been rude to him. After his words, in an even more angry and threatening tone, the Count asked where he got the phoenix ring. The son, scared to death, was afraid to give an answer. His father asked him to hurry up, saying that he did not like to repeat things twice. With tears in his eyes, Alf admitted that his younger brother gave him the phoenix ring. Hearing this, the Count called his youngest son. As soon as Lennon walked inside, he realized what was happening. He couldn't believe that his older brother was so pathetic that, despite the conditions created in advance, he still failed. Lennon decided to pretend that he didn't know what was going on, so with a kind smile he asked his father what was the matter. In response, the father directly asked if he was the one who gave Alpha the phoenix ring. The younger brother admitted this, so the Count asked why he gave him something so dangerous. Lennon began to twist the facts, saying that he did not want Jamie to bully his older brother. But just moments later, his father's words made him tremble, because he said that Lennon did not do this for his brother, but simply wanted to manipulate them. Lennon found himself in an awkward position. He did not understand how his father figured out what games he was playing between his peers. Only at that moment did Alf realize that he had become part of his younger brother's cunning plan. Looking at the children, the Count said that the children most likely had already guessed that they were not interesting to him. With a cold look, he asked if they knew why everything was like this.